And now it's time for me to introduce our next speaker, and I'm really, really excited about this session. Our next speaker is Tim Salau, co-founder and CEO of Guide. And he's going to be talking about the 7 habits for dynamic leaders leading remote teams. And Tim is known as Mr. Future at Work. And if you've seen any of his YouTube videos, you'll know that he's a ball of energy. And Guide, the platform that he's the CEO and co-founder of, provides bite-sized skills training to remote workers, and the platform is helping 7 million people learn on demand. He's also an accomplished speaker, product leader, tech influencer who's helping shape the discussion around the future of work. He's also led product innovation at some small companies you may have heard of, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and WeWork. And he leads a distributed team that are passionately reimagining workplace training and development. And in 2017, he also founded Guide Community. And through this work and through this platform, he's directly impacted more than 75 million people. Tim, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on.
It's great. Could we just start before you begin your presentation? I'd really just love for you to tell us about Guide Community. What is that, and how does it work to have this impact over 75 million people?
You know what, my friend? Thank you so much for the amazing intro. I was so energetic and passionate. I completely appreciate it. I'm always giving intros, and I loved your intro. So the Guide Community was started in 2017, and, I just felt there was a need for it because, at the time I was currently at university, and so many people were coming to me about mentorship and support and career mentorship. And I realized, you know what? Why don't we just create a community where people can learn from each other? Right? Mentorship is one of those problems that never really ends. It never really goes away. And, in a funny way, since 2017, that community matriculated into Guide, the platform, the enterprise platform that we're building now for bite-sized skills training for remote workers and just distributed teams in general for the enterprise. So, everything starts small, turns big.
Wonderful. Look, I really appreciate you being with us. And I'm the first business book that I bought was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I think I was like 15 years old. So now I'm really excited to add the 7 habits for dynamic leaders leading remote teams. Please take it away. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, my friend. And thank you to all of the thousands to hopefully maybe millions of people who are currently viewing right now. And I'm really thankful to be here. And, my session, as just mentioned, is really focused on the 7 habits of dynamic leadership, especially for leading remote teams. And I think the most powerful thing that we're witnessing right now in this time, in a current COVID-19 and potentially post-COVID-19 future, is the opportunity that leaders within organizations have to do one thing: lead in dynamic and transformative times. As mentioned, I've had the opportunity and the blessing of working with some of the top Fortune 500 companies in the world, ranging from Facebook to Microsoft to Google. And the reality is that one of the things that I noticed made the most successful leaders within those organizations, and one of the things that I've noticed makes the most successful leader in any organization, is your ability to shift with the times, your ability to adapt with where the future is going, where innovation is going, but also adapt with the personalities and the people that you meet with, the requirements of the business. Those are all habits. And I've actually, through just sheer observation, I've quantified, I believe, and through conversation, qualify what are these 7 core habits that allow anyone to be dynamic, more importantly, are made for leaders who embody dynamicism. They understand how to adapt their business when times are rough. And more importantly, they understand how to lead teams that may not be fully in their presence, right? They may be all remotely, but more importantly, they understand how to lead these teams so they can get the best out of their team, and more importantly, get the best out of their organization, out of their division, and out of their culture. So here are the habits, right? And I hope you're writing this down. Leading with purpose, leading with authenticity, leading with adaptability, leading with boldness, leading with clarity, leading with compassion, and leading with community. I'm going to say it once again because I really want you to write this down. The 7 habits of dynamic leadership for leading remote teams in a post-COVID-19 era are leading with purpose, leading with authenticity, leading with adaptability, leading with boldness, leading with clarity, leading with compassion, and most importantly, most essentially, leading with community. So for me, early on in my career, I had this situation where I had a boss that hated my guts. And I was working one of the biggest tech companies in the world, one of the greatest tech companies in the world. And one day, I go into his office and I tell him, hey, look, I am not happy within this culture. I don't feel as if I'm valued. In fact, it doesn't even feel as if there's a culture within this team, right? No one goes to lunch together. No one's talking to each other. It seems as if we're all just together to just build a product, launch it, and then go home. There's no sense of camaraderie at all within a situation. So I tell my boss directly to his face, you know what? I don't feel as if you're doing enough to grow me as a talent, especially as early career talent. I don't feel as if you're doing enough. How are you going to invest in my career development? And, my boss, he looks at me, and right behind him, the sun was shining bright, and he was sitting in front of the window in his white office, drinking, his warm cup of morning coffee. And he looks directly at me. I tilt my glasses, and he says, hey, Tim, it's not my job to support you. It's not my job to support you. And in that moment, I realized something. This is not the type of leader that I want to work for or with, right? And I realized that because all of the traits he was showing me up to then were that of not a dynamic leader, right? It was that of a leader that operated under command and control protocols, a leader that didn't really invest in his people and, more importantly, adapt with the team he was building, the organization he was building, right? The vision he was going forward. It was a leader that didn't invest in culture. He didn't invest in people. And more importantly, he didn't have the traits of what I believe make a dynamic leader holistically. And one of those important traits and habits is compassion. It's compassion and being able to create a purpose within an organization, being able to create a purpose within the team. And when I think about how do leaders in this time of COVID-19 and long term in the future, how do you incorporate these habits to successfully lead your team to success? You have to practice them every single day. And the toughest thing about leadership, especially in leading a remote team in a distributed first world, is the fact that leadership now is invisible, right? That's scary, right? How you lead is completely invisible. Your team, the people who support you, right? Because I don't like using the term direct reports anymore. They are not physically with you, right? So now you as a leader, you have to think from the lens of team, vision, and more importantly, community. Team, vision, and community. So think about how you're creating this culture centered around community from a distance. How are you motivating people to be 110% who they need to be every single day at work at a distance, from home, working remotely? And we found out that the communication tools that we have, they work, right? They're not going to replace in-person interaction, but they're effective in still building trust. And one of the ways that I look to do this as a dynamic leader, someone who embodies these habits, is everything I do with my team and for our organization is all about keeping a pulse on who they are, where they're going. So I always recommend for those who really want to embrace these habits of dynamic leading with purpose, leading with authenticity, leading with adaptability, leading with boldness, leading with clarity, leading with compassion, leading with we community. You have to practice these habits every single day, right? And one of the ways I really go about practicing leading with we and also always having the purpose intact, as well as our community at the center, is one-on-ones are a really effective method, powerful method for staying at pulse with your immediate team, right? It doesn't scale to an organization of 100,000, but it's really effective in saying, okay, with the people that I am supporting who are part of the culture that I'm creating within this team, how am I keeping abreast of what's going on in their lives, right? For example, my co-founder, I love him to death. What's so amazing about my co-founder is that, one, he's one of the world's best engineers that I've ever met. But another thing is that, just like any engineer or any human being, recently he's been going through a lot of issues with his relationship with a girlfriend. But our one-on-ones and the fact that even at a distance, we have such a thick and bonded relationship, I'm always getting updates around how that's going in his life, right? Just because you're working with people at a distance doesn't mean you begin to ignore their humanity. In fact, if this time and context and what's going on in the world has taught us anything, is that now more than ever, we need to start valuing the humanity and authenticity that people show and bring to their work. And that we see when we open up Zoom and see their homes and see their families. Right. And I think that's the most powerful thing about this moment for every single leader that's viewing and listening to this right now. It's the ability for you not to become this dynamic leader that not only leads with a sense of purpose and boldness, but also you're always keeping compassion and community intact. And you're always creating clarity about the vision. And you're doing it from a compassionate state. A compassionate state. One of the issues every CEO has when they have to go remote and they have to take an entire organization remote, and any team leader will have this, is that you as a leader, you're missing the team connection, right? You're missing the ability to be face-to-face with your team, shake them by the hand. Shake them by the hand, give them a handshake, because that's you as a leader. You love that. That's the beauty of leadership. But understand, you can still motivate your team and you can still build trust, but you just now have to do it virtually, right? And it's through one-on-ones. It's through understanding that Slack, LinkedIn, these are all social tools that you can leverage to continue to develop thick relationships with your team. One of the things that we do at Guide is we really invest in, because we're building a bite-sized skills training platform that's social first, right? And allows you to upload videos that you can use to train your workers. But more importantly, we have creators on our platform who are creating courses, bite-sized courses that workers at enterprise organizations can learn from. We really invest in social first communication, right? We're really social as an organization. In fact, we're actively always connecting with each other on Instagram and LinkedIn. And some organizations may think that's wrong, but we think it's right. Because if you think about remote organizations now, right, the workspace, the way you communicate, the way you get a sense of personal humanity, it's not only in Slack. You also have to connect on platforms like LinkedIn. Your workforce is going to connect on LinkedIn or Instagram, right? You want to allow a culture within your organization where these connections matriculate and they mature in a very, 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 very natural and organic way, right? Especially as you're leading remote teams. So when you holistically think about the 7 habits of dynamic leaders leading remote teams, they're all human habits. They're all habits anyone can apply and incorporate. But the most important element is putting them into practice. Being able to understand, when do I need to adapt the business, right? When do I need to set a clear vision? One of the most successful organizations of our last 3 years is Microsoft. Microsoft, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, has completely transformed and reformed the company. And He did that by incorporating these 7 habits of dynamic leadership, being able to set a clear vision for what Microsoft's core purpose is for this modern generation to help each and every organization and human achieve more, right? And then doing it with boldness, facilitating a culture that embodies growth mindset. And, as we all know, Microsoft has a huge community already, right? In the market as well as internally within the organization. They're a huge 100,000 plus organization, right? And what's really amazing about dynamic leaders and people like Satya Nadella is that they incorporate all of these habits and they know how to embody it no matter the context, no matter the situation, pre-COVID-19, post-COVID-19. They understand how to embody dynamic leadership in times of crisis and in leading really large, remote, and distributed organizations. So when you incorporate these habits, what you start to find is that the way you're developing relationships, they change. The way you're succeeding in leading your team and division is transformed. And more importantly, you as a leader have to be able to wear these 7 habits, leading with purpose, leading with authenticity, leading with adaptability, leading with boldness, leading with clarity, leading with compassion, and leading with community at various stages of building a team, building an organization, and leading a team, right? You don't wear the hat all at once. You actually have to be very intentional when you decide you want to lead with a bit more compassion, or when you decide you want to lead with a bit more community, right? But use it as a guiding framework to holistically think on how can I be a dynamic leader? And as we move towards a remote first distributed world, how can I ensure I'm incorporating these habits, these leadership habits, to really get the best out of my people and more importantly, show up to my people at 110%. Thank you.
What a great energy boost we've just had. Look, I love all of the things that you've been talking about and how human centric they are. Because the thing that you didn't do is talk about tools and technology and AI and data. Those things enable dynamic leaders to get the job done. But if those dynamic leaders don't have these principles in place, they're just distributing something that already doesn't work, right?
Exactly.
So, my friend, let's drill down into this. I want to drill down into this in the terms of how do you put these things into action specifically for remote teams? What does it look like for you as a leader of distributed teams? How are you putting these into practice? Let's go down the 7 and have you talk about how you distribute all of these good things into those distributed teams.
Yeah. So, I think what's so powerful is that the tools, they amplify these habits, if you think about it. And for us within Guide, obviously, the fundamentals of any great culture is having clear virtues, but also you need leaders who role model and show these behaviors of your virtues, right? So as a leader, I have to, if you look at our virtues on our website at Guide, we have 10 virtues. We almost treat them like the 10 commandments, right? And in fact, those virtues, because we're organically distributed and we all work virtually, right? No one's actually in the same location, right? They inherently are actually designed around a team that is completely distributed, right? And it's something we went through this process within our first year of existence of really documenting, what is the thing that's unique to our culture, and it actually embodies kind of the personalities of our core founding team, as well as the personalities of the co-founder. And when you think about going down deep into practice, is that those virtues make fundamental the culture. And then us as leaders, right, the people who are building an organization, we have to role model that. And then you have to show it, right? And the best way you show now in a remote first world, every day you're communicating with your team in Slack, email, and more importantly, video communication, which is just skyrocketed during COVID-19. And you really have to present yourself as one that understands, based on the context, who you're speaking to, right? Or what the objective of a meeting is how are you showing up as a leader with empathy? And one of the things that we encourage, new hires to do when they come in is that we actually have them go through kind of this apprenticeship program of what the organizational culture is like. So they'll come into meetings and they'll see how people handle meetings. They'll talk to our co-founders, me and our CTO, and they'll learn more about us and our personalities. And we actually even have them share their stories based on our virtues, right? These are all things that they're doing to kind of like embody the culture, and then more importantly transition into our culture, because we're remote first, right? So we don't have a physical location to do any type of onboarding and training, right? And one thing that's really powerful about the tool that we're building is that we're using video to do this as well, right? So you can do this all on our platform, our bite-sized skills training platform, and it's also really effective for onboarding and training, right? So we use our own product, we dog food our own product to really facilitate and cultivate culture at Guide.
Great. So Tim, one of the takeaways I immediately pulled out was remote is part of your DNA, and you've actually built.
It's a part of our DNA. Yeah.
And you've built your values and those 10 core commandments around knowing that you're going to be dealing with a distributed team right from the beginning. Correct?
Yep. Yeah, it's organic. It's organic.
And so one of the things that, and I'm going to go to a viewer question in a minute, but one of the things that I'm really curious about is if you were to go out and advise organizations on this now, would you advise them to now revisit their core principles, their mission, their vision, their values, and think about, are those still relevant if the team is remote and distributed?
Oh my God, yes. Absolutely. And that's the biggest opportunity that leaders have now. Mm-hmm. You can completely rethink your culture, and don't be scared to rethink your culture, right? Because the true thing about culture is you can adapt culture over time, but the fundamentals of culture is that they have to be based upon timeless principles, timeless virtues or commandments. For us at God, we have virtues. We don't have values, because virtues are what people do. Mm-hmm. Values are what we stand for. Mm-hmm. So our virtues tie back to things that we stand as community, but they're very action oriented, right? Because there's a certain behavior we have, or we encourage those who want to become a part of our culture, whether it be physically or virtually, to exhibit so we can be a successful organization. And I think to your point right now, in a remote first world, most organizations, they'll realize, well, you know what? Our culture doesn't really survive the times. They're not made for this context that we're in and that we're moving towards, right? And more importantly, actually, we don't even have a culture in the first place because our people don't even want to come to work anymore, right? And now they're working from home and they don't feel engaged. So, I think a lot of organizations and leaders just they have to rethink everything, but also, do it with a grain of salt, because you still want to keep maybe those core traditions and core fundamentals of your organization, if you're 40 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old, right, intact, but rethink, where is our opportunity to grow, to move where the puck is going, not where it was at.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, we have a really great question from Joanna K, and she says, Tim, awesome inspirational speech. How can an open local culture be spread to the larger community at the company if this is the case? I find that upper management can talk big words but not follow that in their actions, where managers lower in the organizations may lead by example instead of imposing corporate values on the persons in the organization. So how do we, you always get tribes inside organizations that are very proactive. How can those tribes really have some impact, I think, is what the question Joanna is posing is saying. Yeah,
I love that. And tribes always form within a big largism that is an organization. And I think the beauty of that is, at a driving culture at a local level, especially if you're a large organization, Joanne, or if you're working within one, I think it's, every culture duplicates. And a lot of people don't realize this. Leaders don't realize this. It duplicates. But what actually really matters at the end of the day is not how it duplicates. It's more so who's facilitating and leading the culture for that specific locale, that specific team, that specific division. Because that's what you as a leader can control. So you may not be able to control, exactly what are the exhibitive behaviors. But what you can control, what you can really optimize around is the leadership. And this is why I think, it's the 7 habits for dynamic leaders, right? Because these habits, they apply for anyone that's really truly leading a transformative team, a transformative organization. And more importantly, if you're at that C-suite level or if you're at that management level, you have to incorporate these habits. It's not even a choice because they are human habits, and more importantly, they allow you to facilitate and successfully lead your organization. So when I think about these habits, I think it applies to leaders the most. And when I think about how do you really drive culture at a transformative, in a transformative standpoint at a local level, what we can control as leaders is how we lead. Right. Yeah. And this is why I tell leaders every single day, like, there's a lot of things you can't control. You can't control how the market behaves. Like, nobody saw COVID-19 coming. No leader saw it coming. Right. But it's not a matter of what you saw coming. It's a matter of how do you adapt and how are you encouraging the leaders in every of your local regions. If you're a really large distributed organization, right? How are you empowering them to adapt during these transformative times? Right? What are you aligning them around? And what I encourage leaders to do who are currently tuning in and listening to this, and please reach out to me, is apply these leaderships, the 7 habits of dynamic leadership, and create a framework around it for your organization. And one of the things that I do, and I love working with leaders on this, is helping them with that as well.
Fantastic. And I think one of the other takeaways that I would love people, because, you've given such an inspirational speech, is, Joanna, if you're not a leader in your company, don't be afraid to become one. I don't think leadership is a job title anymore. I think it's a mission that you have. And so many times when I'm, going out and doing talks for companies, and, some of them are very large corporations, I said, the people that you followed, are they actually leaders or they're just people that you trust? Yeah. And I think trust
that is so good.
That is such a big thing. And I ask people to I ask them to close their eyes, do a vote. Do you follow people you trust or do you follow people with a job title? And, I get, they close their eyes, they put their hands up, and it's pretty obvious, usually it's almost 100%. People follow who they trust at the end of the day. We also had a really nice quick question from Paula. Thank you, Paula, for your question. In which industry do you think these leadership habits show the most?
Oh, my goodness. This is such a powerful question. I love it. I think they show the most. That is such a good question in high tech. And here's why. Let me, because this is so good. It's such a good question. It's because in technology, when you're working in the tech sector and you're an organization selling software, right? For us, we're selling software as a service, right? Or a SaaS platform. You have to adapt with your customers. You have to adapt with feedback. You have to adapt with the times, right? And so these, once again, 7 habits of dynamic leadership. If you cannot incorporate these habits in the tech sector, you're going to die as an organization. It's so true, right? Satya Nadella, Brian Chesky, the CEO of Google. I've literally studied them, and because I've worked within these organizations, I've seen how they function. They each all incorporate these habits. Maybe not all at the same time, right? But they actually incorporate it to contextually understand when to shift the business, or when to keep it stable, or when to be very, very clear and focused. And you have to leverage these habits, and especially in the tech sector. So we see it a lot in the tech sector. And if you actually read my book, which is coming out in the fall, I'm hoping you all buy a copy, and please reach out to me if you're interested.
Absolutely.
I use a lot of examples from that sector, but I don't only believe that sector alone is where it applies. It's industry agnostic, to be honest with you, right? But the opportunity here for any leader, no matter your industry, is how are you incorporating them within the framework of your culture and your leadership team. And one of the things I love doing when I talk with CEOs and executives is I walk them through this process of how they can incorporate this within the framework of their leadership team, because that's the most important aspect. Because if your leadership team doesn't leverage these habits, I'm gonna be worried about it. It's gonna be worrying for you. So I love that question. Great question.
Yeah, and I think that certain industries are very much very fast moving, very fast changing. The ones you mentioned, of course, if you're in manufacturing, these kind of industries, the technological impacts are going to come in different ways. But also, leaders in those organizations are going to still be recruiting people who are out in the world and are interacting with the world in a different way. So even if you're
Yes.
in a traditional legacy industry, manufacturing, something like that, everyone that you want to attract into your business is going to be looking for a leader who has these qualities. And I said at the beginning of the program when I introduced this morning that there was a University of Texas study, 2014, that showed the number one trust building activity of a leader was taking a personal interest in the person that they were leading, that the person felt that the leader knew who they were. So I don't think that changes across industries. I still want to be a human being and seen as a human being, not just as
So true.
even as a weird, loud human being. But, I think it's really important that people feel that human value that you talked around about compassion. And Paula asks, what's the name of the book? She's excited to buy it, as am I.
My God, Paula, thank you so much. So the name of the book is going to be The 7 Habits of Dynamic Leadership. And I'm still thinking about a subtitle. I would love your suggestions, Paula. But it's going to be The 7 Habits of Dynamic Leadership. That's going to be the main title. And, I'm really excited about it for when it launches. It's going to be a transformative book. It's been in the works for about a year now. And, I think it's coming out at the perfect time. I'm thinking the subtitle is How to Lead Remote Teams. Right. But it's going to be the main title is The 7 Habits of Dynamic Leadership. As simple as that. And I'm really excited about it, Paula. It's been a labor of love for a while. I've been in this space in terms of leading the future of work and talking about it for years now. And I think, the context of where we're at as a society is, the book is now needed more than ever. So, Paula, I hope you pick it up. When I launch it, I am going to be marketing it everywhere. So, I will definitely send you a free copy so you can share with your community. And, thank you so much, Paula, for asking. And I'm excited. I'm as excited as you can see.
Yeah. And I've got a subtitle for you. 7 habits.
What's the subtitle, man?
7 habits for dynamic leaders leading remote teams. What successful leaders did when the world stopped going to work. Boom.
Ooh, dude, that is awesome.
I want some royalties for that. So I have.
That is so good.
We're coming to the end of our. I know it is, but I'm giving it to you for free. So I have one more kind of thing that I want to talk about, which is that command and control. These old leadership tactics of command and control cannot work in a distributed team. It just doesn't scale that way. Can you talk about why it doesn't work? Now you've talked about all the good stuff, but now let's just let's look at this pain point. Why does command and control not work with distributed teams?
Man, that's such a powerful question, man. I wish we were there in person to be doing this. This would be such a lovely conversation in person, you all. I think what's so powerful about this question is the fact that for the last 60 years of work, in fact, for the entire era of work, it is completely up to this point. The way we perceived work and how work has been integrated into our lives is that we had to work dictated our lives. But the era that we're moving towards, right? And you all have, each of you who are watching this, you all are leaders that are building organizations, leading teams, and you have to lead them in transformative times. Command and control no longer works for this key reason. It doesn't motivate people. It doesn't motivate people to be their best. Not in dynamics and complex times, right? So now the new habits, the 7 habits that I've just shared with you, and the new model of a leader is you have to be able to adapt. And that's where the dynamicism comes into place, simply put. And more importantly, you have to adapt to the era we're moving towards. And one of the things I love telling people is that, the world is filled with abundance. We're moving towards an abundance generation. Right? Like technology is actually transforming the world in a good way towards prosperity, right? And for me, I believe in the power of technology, and also I believe in the power of humanity. And I think what's happened during this times is that we're all realizing the humanity that we bring to the table in the workplace. The importance of being authentic, the importance of having a clear why to why you're doing things, doing fulfilling work. So if you're a leader and you're coming in with this perspective that, you know what, I need all butts in the seats. I have to be dictating everything, right? Forget a shared leadership structure. I want to have command over every single decision. Creativity, what's that? Throw that away. You're completely demotivating your division, your team. And more importantly, here's what you're doing. You're losing out on your talent. you're losing out on really achieving that maximum potential of what they can bring to the table, right? And one of the things I'm really adamant about, because I believe that there's structure in everything, right? For us, we're a startup, but one of the things, that the habits that I picked up working with really large companies is the fact that there's structured creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So at Guide, we're very metrics driven, of course, even at a startup. But the reality, though, is that just because we're a startup and we're not necessarily a large organization yet, and just because we have all of this creativity, doesn't mean we can't create a structure and kind of within that structure encourage creativity, encourage expression, encourage authenticity. And for me, when I created this framework for you all, the 7 Habits of Dynamic Leadership, it's one that I abide by. It allows us to be successful at Guide. It's why we're one of the hottest software as a service startups in the world right now, right? And it's what's allowed, even for me as a leader to stand out as a leader, and it's why people work with me. And when I'm telling you all, like in this generation, command and control will not work for you. And in fact, it will kill your organization. So I want you to completely throw every of the traditional kind of mindset of what it means to lead in this generation, throw it out and incorporate the 7 habits of dynamic leadership, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it to survive in the generation we're going.
Tim, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. It's been an energy bomb. You're a brother from a remote mother.
Man.
So all the best to you. All the best to you, and thank you so much for your contribution to the Digital Workplace Summit. Thank you. And moving on now.
Talk to you all soon.
Thank you.